The first time Victoria Sterling told me to tear down my own house, she did it standing in my driveway like she was doing me a favor. She had legal papers in one hand, sunglasses on, chin tipped up, and behind her sat that oversized mansion of hers, creeping so far past the trees it looked like it had been chewing on my backyard while I slept. I remember thinking in one hot, clear flash that I was looking at either the dumbest bluff of my life or the beginning of a very polished crime. My name is Bob Mitchell. I'm 65 years old, and I've been living quietly on that property for 15 years, on land my family had held since 1952. My grandfather bought it, my father protected it, and after my wife passed, it became more than land to me. It became routine memory, and the one place left in the world where I could still hear my own thoughts. Every morning I'd walk out with coffee, check the tomato plants, listen to the birds, and let the day come to me slow. That Tuesday started the same way, until I saw an orange survey stake driven deep into the southeast corner near the old fence line. Now, most folks would just see a bright piece of metal and wonder which idiot left it there. I'd spent 40 years as a land surveyor. I knew exactly what I was looking at. It was a professional boundary marker, freshly set, the kind used when somebody's not asking questions anymore. They're preparing claims. The soil around it was still clean and broken, tire tracks pressed into the damp earth nearby. Whoever put it there had come in overnight, with equipment, without permission, and with enough confidence to act like my land was already theirs. Before I could even finish kneeling down to inspect it, I heard a luxury engine purr up my driveway. Out stepped Victoria Sterling, president of the Maplewood Estates HOA, dressed like she was headed to a corporate merger instead of an ambush. Navy suit, perfect hair, polished smile, all that expensive control. She'd been running the HOA for about a year and a half, and she had that style I've seen before in people who love power more than people. Everything formal, strategic, and just friendly enough to feel insulting. She smiled and said, "Good morning, Mr. Mitchell. We got some boundary issues that need immediate attention." I looked at the stake, then at her. Funny, I was just wondering who trespassed on my property in the dark. That smile tightened just a little. She started talking about discrepancies, historical boundaries, current reality, official records. All that smooth legal language designed to sound neutral, while it slips a knife between your ribs. Then she said something that stuck with me. She said, "Sometimes families pass down assumptions instead of facts. You spend enough years around land law, you learn when a person is just talking and when they're laying track for a train they mean to run right over you." I looked past her shoulder toward that giant new house of hers, the one she'd finished about 6 months earlier, and my surveyor's eye caught something I hadn't wanted to notice before. Her pool deck, an outdoor entertainment area, looked a whole lot closer to my line than they should have been. Close enough that my pulse changed. After she left, I walked my boundary, slow and careful. The old granite markers my grandfather had installed were still there, at least at a glance. Solid stones, weathered, familiar, but the angles were wrong. Tiny thing, maybe, to anyone else. To me, it was like seeing a wedding ring on the wrong hand. Something had shifted, and from where those stones now sat, Victoria's mansion wasn't just near my property. Parts of it looked like they were sitting on it. That afternoon, I dug through every record I had. Original deed, survey maps, tax records, old site photos, handwritten notes, decades of paperwork. My grandfather kept records like a man who trusted memory but respected proof. I did the same. And the more I looked, the more her visit stopped feeling like a misunderstanding and started feeling like a setup. A week later, the first letter came. HOA letterhead, heavy paper, legal language thick enough to choke on. Mandatory property boundary verification required. Neutral tone, ugly intent. They gave me 48 hours to acknowledge their proposed survey, and of course most of that window fell over the weekend. By Monday, I couldn't reach Victoria directly. Suddenly, the woman who had no problem showing up uninvited at my house would only communicate through official channels. Then the survey crew arrived. 3 men, Hard hats, precision equipment, no courtesy, no explanation worth anything. They marched onto my property like I was already a footnote. They had a work order signed by Victoria and stamped with the HOA seal, technically polished, spiritually filthy. For 3 days, they worked a line between my place and her mansion, photographing my grandfather's granite markers, scanning underground, measuring everything with the kind of equipment you use when millions are at stake, not when a neighborhood association has a paperwork itch. Then they left without a word. The second letter was worse. 15 pages, dense, cold, and written to intimidate. According to their findings, I might be occupying land outside my legal boundary. My vegetable garden, my shed, my driveway, all now labeled disputed. They referenced a county survey from 1987 that I had never heard of, never received, never signed off on, and somehow was expected to just accept as truth. That's when the pressure campaign really started. Neighbors got quiet. People at the store looked at me with that careful pity folks where when they think a man's about to lose everything. At the mailbox, at the hardware store, even by the road, I kept hearing the same vague line. Hope your boundary issue works out. Nobody knew details, but somehow everybody knew the story Victoria wanted told. The third letter came 10 days later, and with it came copies of the so-called 1987 records. At first glance, they looked real enough. Stamps, signatures, official formatting. But the paper looked too new. The typography was wrong. And the worst part, it showed my grandfather's signature on a document dated a month after he died. I sat in my office staring at that page and felt cold all over. Not confused, not doubtful, cold. Because once you've handled enough records in your life, you know the difference between old paper and staged old paper, between authentic wear and fake age, between history and costume. Victoria wasn't disputing a line. She was forging the past. And somebody knew I was getting close. One night a car rolled past my house twice, slow enough to notice. Another day I found that a brass reference cap near my front walk had been pried up. Someone had been in my flower bed under my kitchen window. Then I spotted a white van across the street, engine running, telephoto lens aimed at my house. By then I understood this wasn't a petty HOA fight. This was coordinated, professional, predatory. Then came the big move, certified legal notice, a demand that I demolish structures, cease using most of my backyard, and pay $250,000 in damages for supposedly occupying HOA land for 15 years. And on paper, if you didn't know what to look for, it looked airtight. Official county records confirmed that 1987 survey existed in the database. Her lawyers came in heavy. The neighborhood app lit up with glossy maps and board briefs. My shed and apple trees were shaded in red, like a crime scene. I'll tell you something I learned late in life. Facts move slow, but rumor travels like it's got gasoline in its shoes. For the first time, I was scared. Not angry. Scared. I sat in my kitchen that night looking out at the apple trees my grandfather planted and thought, this is how they do it. Not with guns. Not with masks. With paperwork, timing, confidence, and enough pressure to make decent people doubt what they know. Then I got mad. I went into the garage and pulled out the equipment I hadn't touched since retirement. GPS unit, survey rods, total station measuring chains, the laptop loaded with mapping software. Felt like putting old armor back on. Friday morning, I started the most detailed survey of my own property I'd ever done. Inside an hour, I found it. 2 of the 7 granite boundary markers had been moved. Not by weather, not by accident, not by some teenager with too much time. Deliberately, carefully, the stones had been shifted inward 15 to 20 meters. Moss patterns broken, soil different underneath, settling inconsistent. And when I scanned below them, I found the original iron pins still buried where they'd been driven in 1952. That was the moment everything changed. I built digital overlays using historical aerial imagery. Decade after decade, those markers held their original positions. Until 2021, right around the time Victoria took power in the HOA. Then I dug into public records and found something uglier. Over 3 years, Victoria had quietly acquired 12 nearby parcels, all below market value, all after ugly boundary disputes or legal pressure. Same pattern, same squeeze, same payoff. She wasn't just stealing my land. She was running a system. Then I took a harder look at the forged 1987 survey. Under angle light, the county seal didn't match the old seal design from that era. Under magnification, the stamp pattern showed modern toner speckle, not old ink or embossing. It was a new fake dressed up as old truth. By Sunday night, I had 200 pages of evidence in the sweet, strange calm that comes right before a fight you know you can win. That's when Victoria made her fatal mistake. She called an emergency community meeting that same evening. Same-day notice. Final resolution of property encroachment crisis. She wanted the crowd, the pressure, the humiliation. She wanted me cornered before I could respond. She had no idea I'd spent the weekend cutting the legs out from under her whole performance. The elementary school gym was packed. Neighbors filled every seat, lined the walls, leaning like they were waiting for a sentencing. Victoria had lights, screens, a podium, even a videographer. She stood up there smiling like a woman already tasting victory. And for a while, I'll admit it, she was good. Aerial shots, charts, red lines, financial losses, fake legal certainty. Then she put the forged 1987 survey on the big screens and read from a handwritten letter, supposedly from my grandfather admitting the boundary problem. I could feel the room turning. People I'd known for years were looking at me like I'd fooled them. Then she asked if I wanted to respond. I stood up with my tablet in my hand and asked one question. If that letter was written in 1987, why was it written with an ink formula that wasn't made until 2006? You could feel the air leave the room. Victoria went pale, tried to recover, said maybe it was a reproduction. Too late. I put my evidence on the screen. Marker locations, GPS coordinates, historical aerials, the moved stones, the buried original pins, the timing, the property purchases, the pattern. Then I showed proof she'd been working hand in glove with the attorney she kept calling independent counsel, and suddenly the room stopped staring at me and started staring at her. Questions came from everywhere. How many families? Who paid for the lawyers? What else was fake? Where did the county records come from? And then, through the gym windows, I saw a sheriff's patrol car parked outside. 3 weeks later, I was in court with a young property attorney named Sarah Johnson, helping me put the case into legal shape. Victoria came in loaded with expensive lawyers and thick binders, still convinced money and polish could save her. It couldn't. The GPS evidence held. The soil analysis held. The document fraud held. Then neighbor security footage came in. Time-stamped video showing Victoria and 2 men moving my granite markers late one night. That was the crack that split the whole thing open. Under questioning, it came out that a county supervisor who touched the fake records was in business with Victoria. Open court phone call. Judge on the line. Pressure mounting. And the man folded. Admitted the survey had been backdated into county records with help. Admitted money changed hands. Admitted the whole thing was cooked. I've seen storms roll in fast, but I've never seen human arrogance collapse quicker than it did in that courtroom. Her lawyers withdrew. The judge ordered immediate restoration of the boundary markers, shut down every claim against my property, awarded damages and fees, and referred the matter for criminal investigation. A sheriff's order followed requiring the part of Victoria's mansion built on my land to be demolished. I watched crews tear into that giant back patio and pool deck from my kitchen window while I watered tomatoes. And I'll be honest with you, that coffee tasted excellent. Then karma really went to work. Federal warrants, financial audits, HOA removal, civil suits from neighbors, public disgrace. Her husband filed for divorce. She tried one last television interview to paint herself as misunderstood, and instead she looked straight into the camera and said I was just an old man with too much land. That clip spread everywhere. By the end of the week, she was done. The final thing she sent me was a certified check for $400,000 and a handwritten note that said, "I'm sorry. After all that noise, all that theater, all that damage." That was it. 2 words. Here's the truth I took from it. Greed almost never shows up looking greedy. It shows up wearing process, authority, concerned paperwork, and a polished smile. And power, when it sits too long in the hands of somebody hollow, starts believing other people's homes are just opportunities with fences around them. 6 months later, the land was fully restored, every square meter back where it belonged. Victoria's mansion sat wounded and empty, and I had a choice. I could tear it down for the satisfaction of it, or I could do something better. So I turned part of it into a community space. Library rooms, workshop areas, meeting rooms, places where neighbors who got played against each other could sit down again and remember they lived beside human beings, not rumors. Some of the same people who had avoided my eyes during the worst of it came back with casseroles, paintbrushes, folding chairs, and apologies that sounded a lot more honest than Victoria's note ever did. Under my grandfather's apple trees, kids played, older folks sat and talked, and the whole place finally felt like it belonged to something bigger than fear. And I won't lie to you, the most satisfying sight of all wasn't the courtroom or the sheriff or the demolition crews. It was the morning I looked out across my land and saw life on again, ordinary life, peaceful life, the kind nobody notices until somebody tries to steal it. That's when I knew I'd truly won. So tell me this. When somebody uses titles, money, and fake legality to take what isn't theirs, where do you think the line is between justice and revenge? And have you ever seen karma hit somebody this hard in real life? Share your take. And if you've ever dealt with an HOA, a property fight, or a person drunk on small power, I'd want to hear that too.